Hello.
Checking that the safety was on, sliding darts inside the magazine of her tranquilizer gun until it was fully loaded, ensuring everything was aligned. No locks, no jams.
My name.
A large pile of paper slammed onto a worn wooden desk. Daylight poured in through dusty glass, set upon aged wooden frames. The main ranger base of the Emily Francois Nature Reserve was packed with more people than the creaky wooden floors were used to withstanding. Rangers from every station across the park had crowded together inside the base, seated on wooden stools and chairs arranged in a semicircle. All eyes were trained on the time-weathered man leafing through the heap of reports, scrawled with handwriting more akin to chicken scratch, with words that jumped from one to the next with little correlation. Head Ranger Arno. He let out a heavy breath, tired eyes lifting from the incident report to a woman sitting across from him, in the center of the semicircle. The woman who had placed the mess there for him in the first place. She had bright red hair and freckles dusting over her fair face, a bandage wrapped around her bicep, a maroon scarf wrapped around her neck, and she sat bolt upright in her seat.
Ranger Vasilieva.
The woman with red hair clenched her fists on her lap, brows furrowing, eyes hardening, the weight of 10 pairs of eyes pressing down on her.
Can you try your best to describe what happened last night?
She took a breath.
My name? Amber. No.
She checked the safety again and slung the gun over her back. Next, she checked the safety of the handgun on her hip, hanging off the intricate copper belt that had mysteriously appeared out of nowhere, already sitting on top of the uniform she had prepared for that morning. She truly couldn't remember ever finding a replacement for the belt she'd used to stop John's bleeding. Moreover, she was certain she would remember owning a belt like that.
A belt with a tiger's head buckle. Not really something I'd pick out.
And yet, when she got ready for work that morning after, there it was, as though it had always been there. It was apparent that her mind was failing her in more ways than one. She had only experienced amnesia once before, during the height of her PTSD preceding her military discharge. This would be the second. Amber then slid the magazine open to ensure that it, too, was fully loaded. Dead leaves and dry branches crunched softly beneath her boots. The morning held a stiff chill, but it was nothing compared to the bitter Siberian winter she was accustomed to.
Is Amber. My name is Amber. Hello. My name is Amber.
Over and over.
Until I stutter again. Until I slip up and trip again. Until I miss another word. Then 2, then 3, and 4, until I'm right back where I started again.
A year ago, she would have screamed. She would have wailed and cried and shouted until her throat was raw, unintelligible, unrestrained, so that her mind felt less cramped and her body felt a little less like imploding. Now? Oh, now. She was tired. Tired of screaming. Tired of raging. Tired of
hitting my own head hard enough to give myself more brain damage. Never mind, fix it.
Tired of wondering.
When will this end? When will I be normal again?
Over and over again, since the first time she met Dr. Bernard, when she could not form a single word, even though she used to know. The right word is there, at the forefront of her mind, taunting her with its presence, yet always slightly out of reach. Never to be grasped, never to be known by the air, even though she could before, as easy as breathing. Now, oh, now, it was a fight, every single word. Because a fight is all she had ever known.
And all that I ever will know.
So a fight was what she searched for. There had been reports of a large animal roaming the reserve, too many to rule out as a misidentified animal or the meaningless concern of an overly worried hiker. one that did not match any animal they had on record, or any animal that should even be in that region. But she had encountered it, face to face, with her own 2 eyes. Of all the people that could have been there that night, of all the rangers who could have seen the animal with their own 2 eyes, it had to be her. The only person on the troop who could not describe it. The one who could not speak, could not write, could not make herself understood. The reserve was closed to visitors temporarily after the incident. All the rangers were being mobilized to find that thing. That was their highest priority, and that is how things will stay until the animal has been successfully captured or neutralized. She started her hunt where the incident had occurred.
Where Ranger Deschamps' blood dried over the leaves and underbrush.
Past the yellow caution tape that warned visitors to keep out, and stood where she had been rooted that night. Shotgun in hand, shot lined up. Standing her ground as it charged forward, reloading her shotgun, another shot lined up. If she moved, if she turned and ran, she was going to die. And if she died, so did Deschamps. There could be only one outcome from this encounter. She was going to kill that bastard before it killed her. Massive claws swung at her, ripping into her arm and throwing her to the side as if she weighed nothing at all. She landed on her uninjured side, protecting her head and shoulder. She didn't feel any pain. Her adrenaline made sure of that. Her shotgun clattered a few feet away.
A few feet too far.
And she watched helplessly as the animal shook itself from its daze.
A direct hit from a shotgun and it acts as though I'd just thrown sand in its face.
Sniffing around frantically for something, and regaining interest in Ranger Deschamps. She grabbed the nearest thing within her reach, a rock or a pebble, it must have been, with a brilliant shine, and hurled it at the animal's head. Whatever she had thrown, it hit with a force that even her shotgun had failed to produce. The creature stumbled and reeled, then turned to meet her gaze with a vicious snarl. Her eyes darted to her shotgun. If she dove for it at the right time, maybe a harrowing roar. One that shook her to the very core, somehow familiar yet distinctly otherworldly. For a breathtaking moment, the entire world went still, charging beast included. Then, the baffling sound of heavy steps as the beast thudded away into the underbrush. The suffocating pressure on her chest suddenly lifted, as the night seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. She was on the ground, pressing down on Deschamps' leg.
Barely attached. Was he going to lose it?
As he screamed, his throat raw in agony. Whipping off her belt, scrambling to tie it above his knee, and yanking it as tight as she possibly could.
I'm sorry.
Her breath was ragged when she radioed the main base, heart pounding in her ears and hands shaking as it clutched the radio to her mouth.
Help! Attack!
Swallowing her frustration, calming her panic.
Lake. East. Ambulance. Now!
Now, not a day later. Amber stood by the trees, a little past the dried patch of copper flakes, where Deschamps had lay helpless and wounded. She touched the bark of an old cypress tree, where the spray of her shotgun had scored the bark, but not a single drop of blood.
This is impossible. I know I shot it.
She furrowed her brows. She had expected a blood trail, tufts of ripped-out fur, any indication that she hadn't been fighting mere shadows that night. But what she found was perhaps even more perplexing. The shrapnel of her shotgun shell. She kneeled down and picked one off the ground, examining it carefully. It was deformed, as though having made contact with something, and yet they remained perfectly pristine, without a speck of blood or tissue, as though they had bounced right off. Or whatever it was she saw that night was not an animal.
Well, it couldn't have been a tank.
She scowled, balling her hand into a fist and slamming it into the tree.
Fine. You got lucky last night. You won't be so lucky today.
She started moving again, There was no doubt that the area had already been swept thoroughly by the other rangers while she was forced into recovery. She had insisted on staying to help with the overnight hunt, but Chief Arno had sent her to the infirmary. In hindsight, it was probably for the best. She was injured and shaken. She would only slow them down. But the soldier in her still yearned for action. Or so she wanted to believe. Underneath it all, she was guilty. Guilty that it had been Deschamps and not her, when they had both been on patrol that night, when he had a family to look after, when she was supposed to be good at shooting a gun. What did she hope to find that they possibly could have missed? She, who had forgone sleep and sanity as she hunched over piles and piles of her unfinished paperwork, her injured arm throbbing as she forced her hand to manifest the words she saw in her mind, but ink stained paper in all the wrong shapes and symbols. An invisible knife cut her flow short each time, stalling her hand before it could complete an arc or a line. Even after all that effort and suffering, by the time the sun peeked over the horizon, all she had was a mess of half-words and disjointed sentences. Her breathing quickened as she felt her chest grow tight, felt the shakes threatening to ravage her hands. She shut her eyes tightly, blocking out those memories, pushed back against the trauma-induced panic attacks that had led to her honorable military discharge, and landed her here, in the middle of literal nowhere, in a town so quiet nothing could trigger it. Hiding, like a coward. Yet still, it found her, so she suppressed it the only way she knew how.
Tiho.
Be quiet.
Estoy smierro.
Be still.
Estoy mesto.
Be empty.
She let the heat evaporate from her body, let the suffocating fullness in her chest drain away, until she was empty, until she was hollow, until she was nothing. She opened her eyes once more, with new stillness set in her entire body. She breathed out slowly, then recounted Chief Arno's orders.
Find the animal. Capture it if you can. Shoot it down if you must.
You can do this. Focus on the silver lining, Amber.
It was daytime now. Whatever had been concealed in the cover of night could no longer hide. She was also the only person who knew what to look for. She hoped desperately that if she couldn't describe it, she could just find it and stop it. She had always preferred action over words, even before she lost them. She pushed on, through the dense foliage and swirling fog. A quiet voice in her head whispered for her to stop. It was the same voice that had saved her life countless times during her 8-year career in the Russian army. The time before, when her mind was clear and her soul was steady. It had been so much louder then, compared to these past 2 years, before it was consistently drowned out by the loudness of her thoughts. Her foot froze mid-step, and the hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. She was being watched.
Hunted.
Her mind immediately thought of the creature from last night. Coarse dark fur, massive clawed limbs, an elongated muzzle full of sharp teeth, and what looked to be horns coming out of its head. And most hauntingly of all, glowing red eyes that stared right into her steady, unsteady soul. Her hand reached slowly yet surely for the gun on her back, even with the possibility that it was a wolf or a lynx. Any sudden movements might provoke it to attack. But out of the corner of her eye, she swore she saw a glimpse of something large and bright orange.
Orange?
She held her breath until the pressure eased from her back. Only then did she turn her head slightly, just in time to see a striped tail disappear into the foliage. Her eyes widened in disbelief.
A tiger? Here.
She gripped her gun tightly, peering through the scope to make sure it wasn't waiting for her to approach, to pounce when she least expected. With the coast clear, she cautiously moved to where she had seen the striped tail disappear, gun still poised and her finger next to the trigger. It may be a tranquilizer gun, but one dose would be enough to knock out a horse in a few seconds. Would that be strong enough for a tiger?
It fucking better be.
When she neared the bramble and thorns, she checked the ground for its tracks, or its tufts of fur caught among the tall grass and plants. Yet, once again, to her disbelief, there was none.
What?
She blinked her eyes, squinted harder, moved aside fallen leaves with the nozzle of her gun, but still nothing.
Either a zoo somewhere is missing a few animals, or I'm losing my mind too.
Another glimpse of orange, again in the corner of her eyes, traveled uphill deep into the thicket. Without a second thought, she made chase. Winding and disorienting, the paths that led her down were unfamiliar, even after 2 years of learning these twists and trees until she knew them like the back of her hand. No well-worn trails, no markers. Even the way the fog hung on the underbrush felt foreign. Almost
impossible.
Like a coat of freshly fallen snow. And she was well and truly alone.
Just like that day. Fresh crimson gems speckled on blankets of white. I saw the sun in a snowstorm and died that day.
With a piece of chalk, she marked the tree barks as she went, making sure she could find her way back again. Amber was on the move, driving her feet quickly and quietly through the eerie fog and waist-length grass. She kept herself low and her gun ready. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears with rising adrenaline, the anticipation of danger. She took a deep breath and willed her heart to slow down.
Stoi smirno. Tiha.
She saw its form flitting amidst the green and fog, its movements sinuous and mesmerizing almost. The sunlight grew sparse as the canopy above grew denser. The air felt heavier, the pressure thick enough to cut with a knife. There was a distinct sense of wrongness in the chilled air that gave her pause. She questioned the wisdom of her actions, her instincts, treading so far into the unknown on her own. By that point in her ranger career, she was far from the greenhorn she was 2 years ago, but perhaps,
evidently,
none the wiser. Her job had protocols, it had guidelines, and for very good reasons. People went missing in the woods all the time, and the only reason that happened less often to rangers was because they knew the rules, and they stuck to them. And here she was, breaking every single one.
Probably because...
She looked back in the direction from which she'd come, considered coming back later with backup.
I've got nothing to lose.
She turned back to the winding path of untouched flora, creating a lush tunnel with beckoning darkness at the end.
And no one to miss me.
She tightened her grip on her rifle and pushed onward.
Of anyone, it should be me.
A powerful gust of wind blew past, clearing away the fog and rustling every single leaf and branch. She shielded her eyes from the dust and debris, planting her feet firm. Once the winds died down and her gaze found its focus once more, she saw it. Crouched down, just a few meters away, a large Siberian tiger. But it had no eyes, just brilliant light pouring out from its empty eye sockets. She realized then that this creature, it was a tiger in appearance alone. Wild as any feral animal, yet with sentience and intelligence that could not be any less than human in the way it looked at her. Perhaps even more than that. The leaves and the weeds themselves seemed to part for the majestic beast when it rose to its full height and stalked closer, nearly reaching eye level with the 6-foot-tall woman that was Amber. Its glowing yellow gaze was omniscient, ancient. The experience was otherworldly, and its presence was omnipotent, commanding her to stay still.
Stoi smirno.
Who did she just hear? The voice was heavy and regal, reverberating in her very mind. Her body obeyed, nevertheless. It held stubbornly against her mind and its orders to draw her weapon and shoot. She felt herself falling into a trance, a strange calmness washing over her as the tiger drew closer. And yet, she wasn't afraid. She felt a connection, familiarity. He knew her, and she knew him. Epiphany struck, and her eyes widened in realization.
You were there last night, weren't you?
That uncanny roar. She realized now that it couldn't have been anything but the Siberian tiger, or something close enough.
It was you. You were the one that scared the beast away.
The tiger lowered its head, posture relaxing, and so too did the stiffness of her body. She could move again. Her immediate thought was to reach for her weapon, tranquilize it while it had its guard down. But was that really wise? This was clearly not an ordinary animal, so would a tranquilizer even work? What if her shot pissed it off and actually provoked an attack? She was fucked either way. Her mind was still. In all her years, it had never been so quiet.
Maung. Remember this name. Natasha, Vasilieva, Amber. We are bonded.
She sucked in a sharp breath.
How did you...
Right from behind her. Her harsh gaze snapped to the side, straining to see from her peripheral vision without turning her head completely away from the beast. A young man, perhaps in his early 20s or late teens, with strawberry blonde hair, a soft and startled face, and wide blue eyes, dressed in well-worn hiking gear, looking on in utter confusion. She glanced back to where the creature had been, but it was gone.
Blit.
Her mouth curled into a scowl as she finally drew her tranq gun, hoisting it up to sweep the surroundings for any signs of the tiger. The young man's eyes widened in surprise and shock. His hands shot into the air in a panicked flurry of movement, but she focused on their surroundings, searching for danger. This was bad. Whatever she saw, even if it was not an animal, even if she had felt something she couldn't explain, even if she'd wanted to, couldn't fully think about right now, it could still be a problem, and doubly so if she couldn't see it.
Sorry to startle you, miss. I didn't know anyone else was out here.
He stammered, stumbling over his words, eyes fixated on the barrel of her gun.
I'll just leave you alone now, if you'll let me.